Hello. It's been a while. Again. Where to begin? Mercury's still retrograde. Mars is no longer retrograde. What does this all mean? I think with Mercury, so Mercury is actually still retrograde, like I was saying, but it's going to be going direct tomorrow. I think it's like late the 17th, something like that. And that will be finally the end of this double retrograde season that has been quite challenging in a lot of ways. I think it's because Mars was retrograde as it has been since I think early November, even going into October with the pre-shadow period. And because it was in Gemini, Mercury rules Gemini. So the kind of Mercury retrograde havoc is kind of ballooned. It's been wild. Typical, like my car, for example, there's an oil leak and it's been like all over the engine. Thankfully, it seems to be okay. I don't know. I'm getting it evaluated tomorrow. It's been functioning fine. I took it in for an oil change. But long story short, that's a typical Mercury retrograde thing. And then my friend went to his internet was got completely cut off for some reason. And then he went to go drive to get a new modem, and there's a flat tire. It's just like the Mercury retrograde-ness of everything is. It's been intense. There's been other stuff, but the details don't matter. We've all been experiencing some kind of major delays, difficulties, etc. And I think that even though we are in the last day of Mercury retrograde, if anything, this is a good check-in period. As much as let's be grateful. It's so important to be grateful for whatever transit. The great positive of this is it's not like these things don't happen when Mercury isn't retrograde. It's just that, or rather that they're not like building up to this happening, because it's not like it just suddenly happens. Obviously, it's like, okay, well, that deteriorated over time. It's just during the Mercury retrograde that these things seem to probably happen more often, far more often than not. But regardless, what this all is teaching us is just to take care of things, to maintain things, to preserve things, to update things, to upgrade things, to back up things, all kinds of up verbs, and just make sure that we are doing our best there, because otherwise they break down. We have to take care of these things. So I think that's a good reminder, and I think with Mercury being retrograde in Cap especially, this time period has been quite easy to fall into pessimism. I've had to check myself several times to not think so severely or so limited in outlook. And it's just good to keep in mind that even when things are going wrong, things are going right in the big picture according to God. And we may not understand all of it, but we need to embrace it and ride it as a wave, not try and control things. This is true during any time period, but I think especially with this time period, it's really easy to feel like I'm trying to do this or I'm trying to get this done, etc., etc., and it's just not happening. We don't control that. We don't control anything in life, When we're looking at transits or even we're looking at astrological energies or whatever, we're just seeking to understand the overall geometry of the order of things. But we can't control them. I've learned that the hard way. Not that I was like hell-bent on control or anything, but I think a lot of people make the mistake of thinking that this, or like manifestation stuff, right, with candles or whatever, it's like we don't have the full power of God, not even close. The universe, God is like, as I always like to say, we're a drop in the infinite ocean of God, and that's wonderfully empowering in a sense. It's like, cool, divinity is within us. And look, to each their own. I'm not trying to preach. I'm not trying to tell people what to believe or think. Astrology is not a religion, of course. It's a psychological framework to understand ourselves and others and the universe at large. But these are just the spiritual truths that I see, and which make sense to me, and which I seek to share with others who care to listen. And if you don't believe it, it's totally cool. To each their own. It's all good. But yeah, I think that times like these help us to remember that we can't control things. It's good to know these things. It's good to know the transits. It's good to know what our energies are natally. It's good to reflect and think deeper on it and set goals and set plans. but it's really just like, okay, what kind of wave is coming today? You know, like how are we gonna surf it? That's what the whole transits vibe is all about. Is just seeking to understand what naturally is going to happen and how do I deal with it the best possible, and in some ways how do I make the most of it. Definitely, how do I make the most of it, because it's like when you figure out the wave that's going on, then you're not going to try and force things. It's like, you know, with my car, I've been like a little mindful, it's certain things like it hasn't been major or anything, but certain things have been like, okay, I should take them out, you know, oh, there's a little bit of oil on the ground there, okay, I should keep that in mind, you know. So it's not like this huge shock, but if I wasn't aware of all this, then I would have maybe tried to force it and take it out even more and drive even more. And you know, as human beings, we do that. It's like if something's broke, there's a major impulse in us, I think, especially for air and fire signs, to like, it's almost like when you get like a bruise or something, you know, you kind of poke at it. And I think, okay, well, that's to each their own. Sometimes that feels kind of good in a weird way. But like, when something is broken, especially with the whole Mercury retrograde thing, if something is broken, it's really tempting to try and like push it even more, because then it'll like fix itself. Maybe this is just me and a Gemini thing, I don't know, but it's stupid. It doesn't work, oftentimes anyways, and you know, generally it makes things worse. Who'd have thought? You got to be tender with these things, you got to be relaxed with these things, and I think that this is a good message in general with everything in life, but especially when it comes to us and our minds, our mental health, especially at this time, because there's, again, that's been a rough like 2-punch combo, 1-2 combo of Mars Gemini retrograde and Mercury retrograde Capricorn. Again, there's beautiful things about it, there's great things, we covered that a lot in the last transit video, or maybe the last two, and it's been very practical, and it's been very good for getting the details right, and there's always progress, even if it feels like we're falling behind, or if it feels like we're going backwards or whatever. One step forward, I always get this wrong, 1 step back, 2 steps forward, or 2 steps forward, 1 step back, or whatever, but you get my point. Like, we need to have that step back to make sure that we are like being cautious, not going too far in one direction too quickly, going in the right direction, etc., right? We want to be mindful, maybe even more than cautious, mindful, right? Which of course includes cautiousness, but also includes reflection and peace and tranquility and openness, instead of the restlessness and trying to force things and like, rah, rah, rah. So again, we are nearing the end of the Mercury retrograde time period, but we have Mercury, like I was saying in the last couple of videos, really all of January is this time period of coasting a bit and being patient and learning how to wait responsibly. Waiting is an art form, it's a science, and that's really the most valuable thing I've learned with transits. You know, when I was younger, I've been studying this for 12 years now, going on 12 years, and when I was younger, it was like, oh, I'm gonna make the most of the transits, I'm gonna make all my dreams come true, and it's like, let's amend that a little bit. I'm gonna make the most of the transits, check, and do my best to move things forward, and eventually my dreams will come true. Cool. That is the wisdom I've learned from studying all this stuff, is you can't force things. I mean, you can try, and maybe you have a minimum amount of success, but then it backfires, it explodes, you know? Then instead of having to go like fix an oil leak in your engine, your engine's blown or something. So sometimes it's nice, like, yes, it sucks when these things happen with whatever in our lives, whether it's Mercury retrograde things or our relationships or our whatever, something within ourselves or something. But learning how to mitigate challenge and make the best of it, and to responsibly and at peace, even if we don't necessarily like it and go while we're doing it, still to at peace take that step back. That is really helpful, because sometimes instead of taking a step back, first of all, we don't really generally have a choice. We have, like, it just happens. But also, if you take 3 steps forward, you might fall off a cliff or something. You know, again, this is a weird metaphor, but you get what I'm saying. It's like, we need to have those time periods, and every time Mercury is retrograde, or really anything's retrograde, but especially when we have a Mercury and a Mars retrograde, which, by the way, Mars retrograde only happens for a couple months, like every 2 years or so, like roughly, 18 months to 2 years. So this has been a really good opportunity the last couple of months, and even for the rest of January, one could even say for February, when it comes to Mars, Mercury will come out of the post-shadow period. But like I've been saying in the last couple of videos, March is really like the start of the new year in my mind. I mean, it's the start of the new year, it is. But like that's when things are really moving forward. We're out of that retrograde season. We're able to make progress, but it is a kind of like 2 steps forward, 1 step back, or even maybe 1 step back and then 2 steps forward, right? We experienced that delay, the challenge first, and then we learned how to overcome. And then actually that helped us even more so. Then we go in the right direction, and that's the Mars retrograde great gift that we should be very consciously aware of. Because Mars just went direct a couple days ago, yes, but we're still in the post-shadow period for the next, again, basically till, I can't remember the exact date, it's like mid-March, we'll cover it. But long story short, that time period helps us to slow down, take the step back, and figure out where our next two steps are going to be, which is key, because going off in the wrong direction, that can change our lives for forever. Not to worry about it or anything, but we need to be mindful of that always. It gets harder as time goes on to change direction. We always can change direction, but it gets harder, and it costs more in certain ways. And also, we only have so much time and energy on this planet. So, let's go the right direction. And in that way, Mercury retrograde or Mars retrograde or any retrograde is extremely beneficial and necessary. And also, we don't have a choice. But if we learn to surf that wave, it's extremely beneficial. I didn't mean to go on and on about the retrogrades, but obviously that's the most important thing for today. I think last 2 things really quick. We'll cover other things as time goes on, etc. I need to do more trans videos. Thank you for your patience. Is Venus and Saturn are conjunct. So speaking of the whole oil thing or Mercury retrograde car thing, finding financial straits is very normal during this time. And luckily the money is there, but it's like, oh, how much is it going to cost? This is very normal. It's all good. Life goes on. But I think all of us, regardless of our situation, whether we're experiencing a major Mercury retrograde event or not, are experiencing Venus and Saturn being conjunct and being very focused on money. Like, okay, let's be responsible with money. If we're not having enough money, what do we need to change to be able to gain more money? What is money? It's just figuring out how to commit time and energy in a way that brings value to other people so that they echo that value in return to give us their own kind of form of time and energy in a universal format that we can then utilize for whatever that we need or that we would like to utilize it for. So it's just a matter of figuring out, okay, again, how do I commit my time and energy in a way that brings value to other people and also is not debasing me as a human being, that's very authentic and it's fun. I'm growing in some kind of way, it's helping me to grow some kind of skill, whatever it might be. And we all have our own path, and each one is valid to each their own. But I think that's the big thing to focus on there. And I think lastly, Moon is in speaking of money and all that, if you want to help me pay for my car repair, however much it's going to cost, deeply appreciated. I'm happy to provide value in return. As always, I'm doing readings. Info in the description to book a reading with me. It's always a good time to get a reading. Oh, there goes my light, Mercury retrograde. It's always a good time to book a reading, but especially to help Will to keep driving to get things he needs. All seriousness, I love doing readings. I've been doing readings for over 10 years, huge part of my life. Info in the description to book a reading with me. If you have any kind of questions about the reading process or whatever, feel free to get to send an email and I'll get back to you. And readings are just a conversation. It's super chill, completely confidential on my end, very relaxed, and you can ask anything you like, however specific or vague, or if you just want to know more about your chart or more about what's happening in life in general as per the transits, or if you want to learn about a loved one or your relationship romantically or platonically or whatever, we can cover that. There's so much to cover. So come get a reading. It's all good. And I think lastly, Moon is in Scorpio for today, for Monday, and I think like the first part of tomorrow, basically. And this is kind of, we're coasting into the new moon over the course of the next, I would say the next day and a half. The new moon isn't for several more days, but Moon in Scorpio loves Sun in Capricorn. Moon in Sagittarius, which we'll experience for like the midweek of this week, is lovely too. But it's nice when the Moon and Sun are kind of, they're what's known as sextile each other. They're just like a good match for each other. So we're able to feel like as much as Moon in Scorpio can be a very intense time, as long as we're not giving into fear and overthinking and being pessimistic like we were talking about with the Mercury retrograde, then we can enjoy the deeper awareness of our subconscious, the deeper emotional healing, rejuvenation, etc. It's good to take it easy over the next day and a half and to relax, especially if other people are trying to do, like we were saying before, like the whole forcing thing. Hey, so step out of the way, let them do whatever they're going to do. It's all good. It's all good. As long as it's not affecting you, And if it is, you set boundaries, as always. Infinite love to you, my friends. I hope you're having all the best in life. Namaste. Peace.